Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gaming Daddy channel. Thank you very much for your time and audience. I appreciate you guys so much. So, you guys have all heard the news. All our speculations, for those of us who had speculated that we were going to be getting more Division content or at least another game, we were right. We basically saw this because we were following the financials. Some of us have followed from the history of the Division 1 on how the developers actually do things. We followed from just the calendar. Some people can remember that content like survival and all these other things, they came in specific windows, and that's how we're able to kind of draw from where the game is going. And so when the Ubisoft executive in that earnings call mentioned that, that Massive was going to still be working on Division this year and next year, it was really interesting to see that, because that was not actually something that he mentioned in the whole presentation. So the presentation is a very short presentation, and then questions are asked. The only reason he said that was because one of the investors, actually the very first investor to ask questions, asked a series of questions, 3 of them in total, and actually mentioned in the third question about a little bit of a kind of a concern about what Massive will be able to pull off with the partnership with Lucasfilms, the partnership with Avatar and James Cameron with Lightstorm Studios, as well as and he asked, is Division going to be put on a pause? And that's when the CEO said no, that Massive is a big studio. The CEO also, I think it was a CEO or one of the executives, I can't remember, I don't know exactly who's who, I don't know their voices. And he also mentioned a few things. He said, another thing to realize is Massive collaborates with other studios worldwide, basically internal studios with Ubisoft, in order to create the games. And so many of us already knew this because, like if you fire up the Division 2, if you start the game, you're going to see that there are actually all in total 6 studios that worked on bringing this game to you. And that's one of the reasons Ubisoft can really punch out many games. And I've said this before. In fact, I actually did a whole video where we looked around at all these studios. We looked at kind of the scope of their work, and what's funny is in those videos, if you guys can remember, I got called all kinds of names. I got called delusional. Some people said I was grasping at straws. Some said I was beating a dead horse, that the game was over and all of that. But it's not a matter of saying, oh, you were wrong or I was right. No. It's just a matter of saying these have been the markers that we've used to study the Division here in the community. Most of us just have had enough experience to kind of follow the timeline and follow the situations and scenarios that kind of judge where the Division is going at given times, especially the fact that Massive being really secretive, also adds to a lot of the tension. I can see why a lot of people basically kind of like overlooked a lot of this information and data. And, those studios that worked on the Division 2 already have a lot of experience. In fact, what was also interesting is Ubisoft Fantasy, which is also another company that worked on the Division 2. I think they did the raids, Iron Horse or whatever for us, while Massive has been doing something. Can you imagine that? Like, Massive has not even necessarily been touching content for a while now. I mean, they've been doing seasons and some balancing stuff, but it's interesting that another company was actually designing the raids for them somewhere around the end of 2019, moving into 2020, when it got delayed over and over again. Do you guys remember the second raid getting, so many delays? I think these things probably were stemming from the studio being really busy and moving all these projects outside. Ubisoft Fantasy right now has actually also one of their games that they were trying to release has gone into the back catalog. So why is their game, which they promised at the Ubisoft Forward event, why is that game going into a back catalog? Now, they promised that game, and just as, the Division also promised the Resident Evil codename Nightmare event, but a lot of those things were canceled. So studio-wide, there are a lot of shifts taking place. People are probably running helter-skelter right now, but they still want to deliver a game. And they're hiring. For those of us, in the community who have great ideas, who have some experience and stuff, I encourage you to go ahead and put in your application. Maybe you might be the person that changes the scope of Ubisoft because of your great ideas. That's a very interesting take, for a lot of us that are, basically, deving with the devs as well, by giving feedback. who knows, you might be able to influence a project that actually provides some really good enjoyment for for gamers, because one thing about getting gamers into the development ecosystem is they haven't been developers for long, they've been players, and so you can get some really valuable feedback from them. Another really interesting thing too is the manhunts. A lot of the community has been talking about how they feel it's been a disappointment, and it didn't seem like there was a lot of care taken to deliver the manhunt. To be honest, I don't really play the manhunt, so if you were disappointed about it, I guess it's a valid concern. If the manhunts were not up to quality or par, yay, whatever. In my opinion, that's how I see it. I just say, whatever. Can Ubisoft do a better job bringing their stories to a better conclusion? I think so. This is exactly kind of how I felt with the end of Warlords of New York. I just never did say anything about it. But I've never necessarily been too how would I put it? I've never been too impressed with the story telling capacity of Massive when it comes to this particular game. I think what it is that I'm impressed more is the gameplay mechanics and the environment and the world design. Those things really have me very, very much grounded in playing the Division. Other than that, I think anyone that's worried about the Division lore, you'll probably have been affected by this Manhunt ending. Someone like me, I probably would be like, it's just another NPC. And I get it. Fei Lao was very important to us in the beginning and the onset of this game. But like I said, when Keener's own demise did not move me, Fei Lao's was not necessarily going to, do anything for me, because, there was so much build and anticipation to get to Keener, and, he just ended up in the season. I said the season, he ended up in a DLC where we just basically just melted him and took him out. So it's either they have some other, narrative plan in place, which will most likely be world building based, because at this point, man, if you listen to those Langley reports, they basically are hinting that the Division may be moving to a kind of a global state, but I don't know how they're going to write it within the Tom Clancy's universe. It's a very complex universe to write in. A lot of Tom Clancy's stuff is very specific. So we'll see how that all progresses as we're going forward. But that's, kind of the reality that we're in right now. We're just going to still keep playing the waiting game. If you're expecting a state of the game, I don't think there will be a state of the game. And the reason is because they probably don't have answers for all these questions. In fact, the only reason we got what we got is because there is the pay grade of the person who mentioned, the Division still being in the works is higher than all the developers and those that are going to be doing state of the game. This was basically the boss himself who said this. And many of us are, basically well knowledgeable about how these pipelines work. If your bosses say don't say anything, you don't say anything. And I think that's where Massive is right now with their communications. They have not been given any green light to mention anything. And so they're not mentioning anything. In fact, the more they're staying away, in fact, the better it is, because that means they're actually spending time working and actually getting on the game. To be honest, I'm not going to be interested in seeing, a developer right now sitting on a state of the game for 45 minutes. They can use that time to actually do some really good work. And so to me, no state of the game, that's fine with me now, especially that, the fact that we've gotten some more information and some more details. So that's pretty much my take on all of this. I appreciate you guys so much. I got to go to bed. It's really, really early in the morning, but thank you for those of you who basically stood, by and, evaluated all of the evidence that we provided. And, those of you who basically have just, put your time and effort in participating in the Gamey Daddy channel, I appreciate it very much. And, for those who were, doubting, I'm happy that you at least have some information right now. So this is something that, bittersweet, we can still kind of, say, okay, the Division is not yet over. There's still more to come. So thank you very much for your time and audience. I appreciate you guys so much. Hopefully we'll talk in another video. Peace out.